Hello and welcome back to the APSCC 2020 webinar series. I'm Christopher Slaughter. Today our topic is the prospects of satellite companies exploring vertical opportunities. Today our webinar session is brought to you by Apt Satellite. We're very pleased to have their support for the series and for this particular session. Joining us in just a moment, Stéphane Chenard from Euroconsult. He'll be moderating the discussion today. He'll be joined by Huang Baozhong from APT, Nkang Gi from Singtel, and Jason Lee from AP Satcom. Take it away, Stéphane.
Hello, welcome to the Asia Pacific Satellite Communications Council latest webinar. The satellite industry is a vast and complex value chain, and for companies in that ecosystem, one of the strategic questions has always been vertical integration. Should we stick to operating satellites or to providing VSAT services, or should we go down the value chain and provide end-to-end services? Some companies have decided this way, some companies have decided that way. We will explore today with all three speakers their views on this strategic question and drill into what they are observing, maybe directly, maybe through their customers, in some of the vertical markets where the satellite industry plays best. With us today are Mr. Huang Baozhong, Executive Vice President of APT Satellite in Hong Kong, Jason Lee, Chief Executive Officer of APSAT, which is a subsidiary of APT and which is very much into vertical integration, since you provide mobility services right now from Upstar 6 and I think lease capacity as well. And Nkang Gi, Head of Satellite and Voice Support, hello, from Singtel in Singapore. Singtel needs no introduction. It is, of course, extremely vertically integrated because you go all the way from running satellites to providing retail consumer services. And I'm Stéphane Chenard with Euroconsult, joining you from Paris today, where, as you can see, we have some very nice sunshine streaming in. Gentlemen, let's start maybe with some general remarks. You may want to update us a little bit on your recent news and what your companies have been doing in the past 6 or 12 months. Specifically, maybe in terms of integrating down into managed services and maritime and aero services. And then I would say, let's start with a general question. Some companies like SES have vertically integrated for years, and they will provide end-to-end managed services. Other companies have said, we will never do that. We would rather stick to the core business and of offering capacity and not risk going into retail markets. What are your strategies in that respect? Where is a good place to place the cursor? Who wants to start? Nobody else forced the issue. Mr. Huang Baozhong, let's start with APT then.
Okay. APT Satellite is a company registered in Hong Kong, and we have already in operation for more than 28 years. And right now we are operating a fleet of 5 satellites. We have traditional C-band and Ku-band capacity, both for data and video business. And in addition, we have also launched on our Upstar 5C some Ku-band, Ka-band HTS payload, which is very, very welcome in the market. So my opinion is, compared with the traditional way of doing satellite business, we have to change our mind right now. So the satellite operators go to vertical is a must. Simply because if you look at the service side, the service providers are squeezed in between. For example, the cost for the traditional telcos is lower and lower, and on the other side, the satellite cost cannot be reduced significantly. So the margin for service providers will be limited. But on the other hand, a satellite operator has to do something to, let's say, to rescue themselves, the business. But they cannot continually sitting in the office and by only have some drinks with the customer, visiting customer, have some fun, and then sell their capacities. No, that's the.
That seems like a good life, Drew.
It's a good business before, but if you continue doing that, I think it's may encounter problem. So right now, at least for ourselves, we are considering, and we did something already to have the so-called vertical integration. And as you all know, that we have established a new joint venture with other partners, the company APSAT, the APT Mobile Satcom in Shenzhen, where the CEO, Jason Lee, is also here. This is our first step, but additionally, we also try to seek partners to set up other similar companies in other Asia-Pacific countries. Our targeted market clearly will be, let's say, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand, and so on. Maybe also in Middle East areas. So we want to go vertical. This is definitely our direction.
So you're looking to establish more companies along the same lines as APSAT in other parts of the footprint.
At least we consider this is part of our strategy. Although the implementation may take long due to the regulatory issues in each country and due to some terms and conditions, we need to negotiate with the potential partners. So
is there any of those places where you are closest to doing the deal?
I cannot declare now, but we are really targeting that way.
Okay.
And
I think we noted the order in which you listed those geographies, so maybe that says something.
Yeah. On the video side, my expectation is we cannot expect too many newcomers into the video area, I mean the broadcasters. So far, I do not see that. The satellite operators are normally competing with each other to grab the existing broadcasters to try to fill their maybe traditional C-band and the KU band. Probably the good news is due to the 5G spectrum fight, some lower bandwidth will be give way to 5G. So only limited spectrum is left for video. So far, I'm not so worried about the existing broadcasting business. So probably we need to have them to migrate to a higher frequency in order to avoid the interference coming from the 5G deployment. So the future competition is mainly from the service side, the data service side. Okay, that is generally my opinion.
Yes, there were a couple of points in there that I think we will want to revisit later on. Jason, since APSAT was mentioned, give us an introduction of what you're doing, who you're doing it with, what are your markets and the tools you deploy in there.
You hear me? Yes. AP Satcom, as we call it, APT Mobile Satcom, is APT, belong APT Group, and this company is quite new. This company is founded 4 years ago, and AP Satcom are created especially for the mobility market, like the IFC business, also the Maritime. So this year, we are very happy to launch my first satellite, APSCC. Also the KU and the KE band satellite. For the user beam, we are using the KU band, and for the hub beam, we are using the KE band. And APSCC co-located with the APSCC, which belongs to APT, in 134 East degree. So we share the obvious slot. And we also, APT also help us to do TT&C. So APSCC focus on the service, like the Baozhong mentioned. Yes. Well, we try to touch the customer, like the ship owner, also the end users. Yes, who will use mobile phone and to get internet. So 6D satellite designed for the, we just think that half of my capacity will serve us for the RFC, and maybe more than 30% of my capacity will serve us for maritime, especially for the East Asia. You can see my coverage in East Asia, including land, including ocean. We put more beams, and small beams, that means we put more bandwidth in this area. But this first satellite also covers the Pacific Ocean, also the part of the Indian Ocean, like also cover the Russia and New Zealand, Australia. Because RFC business, we want to see the whole coverage. So this is a good satellite. We just finished IoT testing, in orbit testing. Yes, everything is good. And when we began to do some free trial for the user from the last week, everything is good. And that means ITS satellites not only provide more bandwidth, they also provide the stronger signal. This is very good for the small antennas. My smallest antenna was just a 28 centimeter antenna. And it's very easy for this small antenna to uplink more than 10 Mbps. So my customer is very happy. So if we expect maybe next year, maybe no later than January 1st, I will get revenue based on this ITS satellite.
And I think it's maybe worth mentioning that your partner in this joint venture is the Chinese company which operates Beijing Mobile Communication Network, which has been the main provider of mobile satellite services in China for the past 30 or 40 years, right? So that's correct?
Yes. One of my biggest shareholders is MCN, who is also the operator. And the interesting is that he is also work with the Inmarsat for mainland China. But he invests more in my company. So now we work very closely for some government market. Yes.
And so, how many ships have you loaded on the satellite at this point? Can you say?
No, you mean not satellite? In my satellite?
No, you're on Epstar 6D. You said you're starting to load end users.
Yes, now we are doing for trial just around 100 ships for the 20 beams, because we just opened the beam from last week, and we are using the IDIAC velocity system and the small antennas to do many tests. Yes, because there's a very challenge for the ITS satellite, because normally for traditional one beam, it's very easy to see the carrier in harbor, but we cannot see the harbor because the end user beams in the ocean. So we need many ships to do the whole link test. Then we can begin to provide service formally. Yes.
Very good. And Kengi, we don't hear about satellites from Singtel very often. Singapore being the great maritime country that it is, you are very active in the maritime SATCOM market as well. Let me add for you maybe one additional question. Since you're part of a big diversified telco, I'm wondering how the satellite operation is seen by the other departments within Singtel. As Wang Baozhong mentioned, the satellite operators used to sit around and drink with customers and mainly just sell the capacity. which is, I think, brings it. The satellite operators have one thing that differentiates them maybe from the other telcos. They all operate more or less globally. Or if you are in this business, you got to have a map of the world on your office. You have this fantastic portfolio of customer relationships, maybe not all over the world, but at least all over your region. Whereas, I guess if you work in most other departments of Singapore, you only go to Singapore. So having a satellite shop inside a company, is it seen as another way of engaging with the world? Or are you the probe that goes into markets that the bigger Singtel otherwise might not so easily reach? And apart from that, what are your satellite news recently? And Kengi.
Hi everyone. For Singtel Satellite, we actually covers the markets from Middle East all the way to Asia, and then when we go down under Australia, New Zealand, Pacific, we either work directly or even for some of the connectivity, we work through our partner, which we own, Apt Satellite, which they are also quite well known in the world down under around that region itself. So yes, Singtel is a full-fledged telco operator. So in the bigger scheme of things, satellite actually is only a very small niche part of the whole organization itself. So for the satellite play in Singtel, I think we are one of the few operators which operates not only on land, but also sea. So over the sea, we actually operate on our own, using our own satellites, or for that matter, in partnership with Inmarsat, as for that matter, also with KVH. So we are actually not into 100% that it must be full-fledged Singtel. We are very open and transparent to find the best solution for our customers, be it price or technology. So it's all about creativity, innovation, adoption. So this is actually where we come in as that, okay, look, we are a telco. We also not only provide the satellite play, but we are also able to provide the full range of fiber connectivity, teleports, and every other things itself. So satellite play, in some ways, we supplement and complement some of our customer experience, as we call it, to provide the customer a fully managed network, full end-to-end with diversity. As we're all aware, satellite connectivity can never take over 100% of fiber connectivity in terms of price, throughput, and everything. So in some ways, we find a way where we are able to cover certain niches of the market where fiber cannot reach or mobile cannot reach, or as a backup service. So this is how we put the satellite play within the Singtel group. Yes, there are certain customers who only want a very particular service. I just want point-to-point within one rural area to another rural area, or to my headquarters, or sometimes it's just for now, increasingly, the new world is how do we mix and match certain things like even IoT, connectivity, or, sensoring, monitoring. So there's actually a lot of things which are happening today of how perhaps it looks into the evolution of, or how the satellite play can come in. Traditionally, I think that one of the strengths of a satellite is always point-to-point, or for DTH. But I think I would like to add on the earlier point of where Bao Zhong came about is that for us, I think as players in the satellite, I think we all need to evolve. I think this is where perhaps we can even look at what will be the next evolution of satellite. How do we fit in? Because I think if you look back a little bit, once upon a time, satellite was only for, the very rich company of perhaps even maybe two monopolistic companies. One is called Inmarsat for the sea, one is called Intelsat for the land. And if you look at the evolution and development of the satellite industry, there's a lot of privatization, And then now there's also a lot of national satellites for that matter. We have actually come a long way since the 1970s, where if I recall, the launch cost of one satellite, it probably costs about what, 18,000? The launch cost, I think SpaceX was saying 18,000 per kilo. I think SpaceX was recently claiming that they are able to do a launch cost of about what, close to $3,000 per kilo. So, I mean, if you just look at the cost coming down and then look at the development since 1970s of where Intelsat, Inmarsat has come about. If you look at those days of the 1970s, Intelsat, Inmarsat were carrying traffic primarily for voice or small data bits. And we are talking of throughput of kilobits per second. I think if you look at the recent news, everybody is looking at even perhaps gigabits. We are actually now the minimum, everybody is about megabits already. So I think it's all about now where and how do we see the evolution. So as far as for Singtel, I think we are keeping abreast of the development. We are not only providing pure plain pipes. We are now trying to say, as what Jason has earlier alluded to, how can we bring together a fully managed package, which in my opinion, we may evolve into a model where it could be involving like a full ecosystem itself already. I think
well, you have to be, clearly you have to be selective in where you vertically integrate, because you cannot, the satellite can touch a lot of different markets, a lot of different objects on the ground. You cannot possibly be an expert in all of those markets. As you mentioned, it's also an ecosystem. You need to have fiber, you need to have ground infrastructure. The service providers who are watching the satellite operators integrate would sometimes say, but I don't have a satellite. I don't want to have a satellite. I want to be technology agnostic and use satellite when it makes sense, and use terrestrial networks when it makes better sense, and use the two at the same time if that's what my customers want as well. So there's a whole toolkit that you need to have. There's a little bit of risk through that. If you are a satellite operator, at the end of the day, you're going to be selling satellite capacity. And so you're not going to be completely technology agnostic. Maybe that's not a concern at Singtel, because you're also one of the world's biggest submarine fiber operators. But for a satellite operator, there's some markets where it makes sense to go fully into managed services, and there are some markets where you could run into situations where the managed service customer says, I mainly want fiber.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do you do?
Well, I think it is, for the past 3 years, I think we are still looking and evolving what would be the right model. The model I looked at is that, yes, we have said that we cannot be providing just the plain pipe. But on the other hand, we don't have the expertise nor the price competitiveness or ability to do everything. Which comes back to the earlier point I said, the way moving forward is about ecosystem. Let's say, for example, if you're looking at IoT itself, there will have to be somebody who developed the software, somebody will have to develop the sensor, somebody will have developed the bandwidth, and somebody will have to go and develop the antenna. So it's a matter of how to bring all these partners together to be aligned with one vision, one strategy. Today, the way we looked at things are, okay, look, one service provider, he will bring in all the partners, and then he takes all the risks to integrate. Tomorrow, the model may well evolve that, okay, look, we are all in this together. Everybody will chip in such that, okay, look, if I want to go into this market, this is where I need to do. Maybe I just sidetrack, I personally feel that actually one of the very big ecosystem breakthrough could be, perhaps you look at it, is SpaceX itself. SpaceX is looking into the launching. They are looking into the satellite development. They are also looking into Starlink, where they go down right down to the consumer. But when they go down to the consumer, are they going to develop the antennas themselves? Are they going to develop the routers themselves? Are they going to develop the internet connectivity for themselves? So I think right now is what we call a ecosystem. How do we bring a group of people who agrees that the end point is like, okay, look, I want 1 million customers. So if everybody is 1 million customers, everybody chip in to do a little bit of R&D within your own niche itself, then everybody is okay, look, my target market segment is 1 million. I can get 1 million customer if this project, which is actually an ecosystem of people coming together, will have 1 million target. Today, the model is, okay, look, if I am a satellite operator, I want 1 million customers. So I will have to go and find somebody who will develop maybe a software for me. I will have to find somebody who develop something for me. So when you are the one trying to do everything and integrate everybody, it's a bit more difficult.
Right, and putting the technology together is certainly something that a technology company such as a satellite company is well placed to do, and you can do that with a bunch of partnerships, or you can keep the value for yourself and do it yourself if you are, after all, good with technology. Actually, retailing the service to millions of consumers who care absolutely nothing for your technology. If you're in a consumer market, they may be buying because they like your logo. They may be buying because they like the retail outlet, or the TV channels that you're bundling with it. Some things that have nothing to do with the technology. And that's where, of course, we are all watching SpaceX's performance as they morph into an ISP. Maybe let's not go too deep into the consumer market. That could be a fascinating debate for later on, or for another webinar, for an entire webinar, undoubtedly. You've touched upon IoT. And you mentioned an ecosystem of tools, a toolbox that you have to bring. One of those toolboxes is data centers. Let's look at some of the technical pieces that you have to have under your roof. APT actually has had a data center for quite some time. It was not the most visible part of the company at all, but I'm wondering what advantages you'll find that this brings to you now in terms of knowing how to run a data center, in terms of having your own. And I'm wondering also if data center operators like Equinix or Telehouse are becoming satellite customers today, because the teleports are increasingly, the data centers are the teleports. They are the nodes through which the traffic goes. And those organizations were not really on the satellite map until fairly recently. Wang Baozhong, since you're the data center man, and Kengi very, very much as well, but let's start with EPSTAR, since that's not a very widely known capability, I know.
Yeah, thank you. Although the IDC business count only a very small fraction of our revenue, but it is extremely important for us to extend our business. With the IDC, we are able to provide fully managed and packaged service, one-stop services, or you can say it. And the business is going very well. So far, we have sold out all our racks. So all the racks is already sold out, and still not enough. So the company is also considering whether we should expand the IDC scale.
Does it help sell the satellite capacity, or vice versa?
It helps with the satellite capacity usage. Again, although not too much, but they did help a lot. For example, especially for the broadcasters, and with the IDC, they have flexibility to co-locate their servers, their other equipment in our IDC, and they are very satisfied because we have the Tier 3 IDC. It's very reliable, and the service in Hong Kong is also considered as high grade. That's one of the reasons why in such a competitive environment in Hong Kong, Hong Kong is overflooded with IDC, but we still have good business. It can help us to lock up some important broadcasters here.
Another big tool in the toolbox is all the cybersecurity tools. Very often now you go talk to a shipping company, they will be a little bit interested in what antenna you put on their deck. But question number one may very well be the cybersecurity, because then shipping in particular is an industry that's waking up to that. The satellite industry is waking up to cyber risks. For a long time, the common wisdom was that you cannot hack into a satellite. Now that's not so sure anymore. Is the market so well supplied with cyber solutions that you can just shop and bundle them with your satellite services, or is it something that now you want to insource because it's too important? Who wants to address that?
Well, I think maybe I can take a stab at that. I think cybersecurity is something which is still evolving. I think all of us in satellite industry, we also have to think about how can we integrate cybersecurity into as part of a total package. Because that is where Singtel is looking at also, because we are not looking only at the plain pipe itself. So we talk and we try and position ourselves that we are able to offer the full end-to-end services of not only the plain pipe, but also a fully managed secure pipe itself. But to start that, on cybersecurity, I think the key fundamental, I think everybody understands, okay, look, for cybersecurity, you need to have your antivirus, and those are the very basic. But for us, I think when we look at cybersecurity, we look at it that, number one, you have to address what is the weakest link actually in the cybersecurity is actually human beings. It is not so much of the technology and stuff like that. I think if you look at the way people, or rather way companies are hacked, usually is through somebody. Is usually a human being, because they are the weakest link. So for us in Singtel, we have actually a full-fledged of cyber services which we have developed, including the most important, which we believe is the training of the personnel, which I think we have also just recently launched what we call the Cyber Awareness Education Program itself. This is primarily aimed at companies who are operating in the maritime industry, because I think IMO has issued a guideline that by next year, January, all the major shipping company, or if you are in a shipping company, you need to conform to a minimum level of cyber awareness. So we have actually launched also the latest, what we call the Cyber Security Awareness Program, where we try and address this weakest link, which is actually the crew, as well as the staff. But on top of that, we actually have a full suite of cyber products, which, you have the firewall, the antivirus, as well as the monitoring. We can do the pen test. So we are actually looking at, we are in a good position to offer the full suite. But the most recent one is, I think, the product which we just launched is the cyber awareness, which is aimed at the training the staff members.
And there you need to have to be not only drinking with the CEO of the customer, but to be very much on the ship decks with the operational people. Anybody else wants to comment on cyber? We'll move on to IoT, which has its cyber vulnerabilities as well. Maybe even more difficult to control, because there's more attack points, there's more endpoints. IoT, an immensely complicated and potentially variable market with potentially hundreds of millions, if not billions of devices. All of these little devices sit on the edge of the network, where satellites are very well placed to backhaul them. And it's the quintessential vertical integration play, because there you deal usually with industrial users who have their own language and their own technical specificities. And I was told once, talking with a service provider who was selling devices to put on police cars. And I said, well, you have this application that you put on those police vehicles. Maybe you can put them on fire trucks as well. The guy he took a step back and he said, what? But absolutely not. It's a completely different universe. Fire trucks, and to me, they were all emergency vehicles with blue lights. No, it turns out those are completely different industries. They don't read the same papers. They don't go to the same trade shows. They don't have the same priorities. They don't use the same technical standards at all. You go into this with your satellite service and think you can sell to everybody in uniform who has a blue light on his car, and you wade into this, not the same ministries, they don't buy things the same way, all this complication. But you cannot be in telecom these days if you're not into IoT, including maritime and aero. Where do your satellites fit in this? What's as you consider this vertical integration, Mr. Lee, as you sell to your services to shipping companies and airlines, they must be asking you, can you take care of my engine monitoring as well? Do you need to customize solutions, or is it some kind of VSAT service, but with a smaller antenna? Jason, please.
Yes. Yes. For IoT, yes, I have my opinion is, I think the first question for IoT is who will be the customer, and what kind of solution, who will be the customer of the solution? Yes. For in Chinese market, yes, I think we have two. Excuse me, my network is not good.
No, we can hear. I can hear you fine.
I can hear you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The first customer is the manufacturer of the ship. Yes, they want to mine the data about their machine. Yeah. So we work very closely very close from this year, and they will put more sensor when we finish the manufacturing. Okay, and all this like 100, even close to 200 sensors, they need data back. Yes, so we work very closely, and they provide what they want, and we build software together.
And so this is, what do they want to monitor, for instance? This is for what sort of end applications? Where have you found that there's the most interest? Is it monitoring the engine for preventive maintenance? Is it, in shipping, there's a lot of the discussion now is on scrubbing the emissions to make sure that the ships are not putting more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere than will be permitted. That requires potentially as well little chemical sensors on the chimney to send an alert if the ship is not scrubbing correctly. Where's the market interest in your experience?
The market, I think we need to worry about the market because they will pay us data by data, like we talk about data center. I also have a small data center, and I think that for the teleport, we need this data center. So this kind of the customer, they will not buy based on bandwidth. They will buy based on data. Yes, we are still talking about this model. Like the one ship, they will pay us around maybe $1,000 US per year. But we are talking about how many sensors we put, and maybe for emergency communication, they need how many bandwidth they need. So they need about the bandwidth. They just talk about data. How many data I will provide to them. But actually, I do not understand what data for. because they will use data. I will not.
But they're still learning about what the market can provide and what their own needs might be. You're still learning about what their needs might be. It's a mutual education process. While they're talking about communications, they're asking you to educate them on what they could do.
What? Sorry, ma'am.
It's a mutual education process. The customers don't necessarily know what they need.
Maybe I can answer some questions. Okay.
Yes, Wang Baozong, please.
Okay. So I think the market is very big. I give you example. Big companies like Cummins diesel engines or Caterpillar or Hitachi, who sells big machines, and those machines normally was based on the financial lease. So the machine is owned by the company, but they lease to the customers. So they need to know where the machine is and how well the engines or the machines is working. So they need to put a lot of sensors onto the machine, and they need to get a real-time feedback of those conditions of the machine. And one statistics I learned from Cummins is say the repair and the maintenance of the engine can make more money than selling the engine. So this is just an example. So from that, you can tell the customers when the machine or the engine could be maintained and where is the nearest shops you can go and so on. So how many lifetimes you can go before the next big change, the change of the
and now Cummins has a chance of becoming an APT customer, which if you had just been selling VSATs, they probably would never have.
It could be APT's customer, could others customers, anyone who provide telecommunication services. That's
In Kengi, there's probably a IoT must be a major focus at Singtel. How much are you, and as a mobile satellite provider, you've already been in there. True, Inmarsat was not the ones who started in that market. They are in there now. What's your view on this? How much are you involved? How big is IoT in your portfolio of satellite services?
Well, I think the benefits of IoT, I think nobody dispute. Everybody agrees that, yes, it's very good. This is the way forward. But when the tire hits the road, unfortunately, when you have to write that check, it's a bit more difficult. Because, okay, look, can I delay this about another 3 months, 6 months? Then before you know it, time flies. So that is actually the challenge for us, is actually to get the widespread adoption. The awareness is there. There is no doubt about it. The benefits, everybody fully agrees. I think
it's complicated.
Yeah, because it's not so easy. The problem with having, let's say, IoT, just even for the shipping industry itself, there are so many kinds of ship engines. There are so many kinds of ships itself. So every ship is not, it has to be in some ways custom built.
And it really goes also into the guts of the customer's equipment, because putting communications on a bridge, that's one thing. If the phone breaks, the ship can carry on sailing. Now but if you're attaching the engine, now you're attaching the vitals of the ship, and very big pieces of equipment produced all over the world. Those are industrial production chains that are not easily interfered with, which is why it does take time. Yes.
So I think the challenge is actually adoption. When will it be such that, if you look back again, once upon a time, just look at the mobile phone where, you had those big bricks itself. Everybody look at the bricks. Oh, how many people will really want to carry the bricks around? So you fast forward maybe let's say 15 years later, none of us can leave home without our mobile phone nowadays. So it takes about really 15 years where you really shrink the whole thing, you mass produce it, that it becomes the de facto standard where it's just within your palm size and it's slim. And once in a while, then now we're going back to, you must be big again. So that's about evolution. So for IoT, the way I looked at it, I think the adoption will still be about maybe 3-4 years ago, mass adoption. I think there are a lot of customers who are really trying out. These are the early adopters. We have actually gone through and gone past the awareness, gone past the education, and gone past the proof of concept. I think it's all there already. It's just a matter of executing it to mass production. I think that will be a challenge for us because now, because of COVID, actually it set little thing back because everybody is a bit of a tight budget now. So it does set and shift the time frame slightly. That's why I will put that perhaps you get still maybe adoption, maybe 2-3 years.
Okay, gives everybody a bit of time to sit back and think. We gotta talk about airplanes. And by the way, dear audience and listeners and watchers, you know that as you're watching this, you can send questions to our panelists via the Slido application. Feel free to do so, and they will hopefully fill you with lots of response. Now, APSAT is very much into the aero IFC market. This is one of the vertical markets that got the most of the satellite industry's attention. It's right now maybe in slightly unusual circumstances, but it will come back. The main and your main customers on Upstar 6D are companies that operate in that space. So let's spend a bit of time on this. Update us on where things stand maybe. The problem with in-flight connectivity is nobody disagrees that it's nice to have internet in your seat when you're flying. Okay, so I agree with that. I think we're all no one doesn't want it. The problem is someone has to pay for it. In some places, it's the airline because the passengers will not pay. In some places, it's the passengers because the airline will not pay. In which direction is the Chinese market going, since that's mainly where the planes that you are connecting, that's mainly where they're flying. And by the way, as we speak today, this is one of the most vibrant and resurgent passenger markets in the world. So what's going on there? We're I think all very keen to know how good or not good the IFC market is for you at this point. Jason.
Yes, now in Chinese market, yes, we have the customer PAC, yes, because the PAC hold about 150 wide body plane, and this plane used to fly to outside China, and because COVID-19, and now we fly inside China, and some airline company began to charge the customer, and yes, I think some customers want to pay that, but another challenge is narrow body plane. You're right, airplane not want to pay the hardware, so it's very hard to push the market moving. But from last month, you know that in China, China Telecom also have the K-band. Yes. From last month, there's the first narrow-body. I think that's first narrow-body plan began to use K-band STS satellite. Yes. And there are 3 parties, actually 4 parties. Yes, one company want to pay the cost. Another company maybe provide solution, and also the Telecom provides the bandwidth, and airline company provides the plan. Okay, when they get revenue, okay, you share the revenue. this is a new business model from last month, I guess.
The narrow body is getting connected is, of course, very important. It's not without implications for satellite because there's less room to put a big antenna on the plane, but there's more of them, and they fly shorter distances. I'm wondering if, for instance, gate-to-gate service is permitted, because suddenly it's all the regional flights. So now they are the main flights going around the region, the domestic and the regional flights, as opposed to the long haul. You're saying the narrow bodies are getting connected. That's very good news.
Yes, I believe that. I also work with from Chinese service provider, YFC, and I believe that maybe the Q2 also have the KU-band narrow body plan will begin provide service from the Q2 of next year. And the challenge is how to push market hardware. We try to find some of the hardware, cheaper hardware solution, but I believe we need more time because Chinese market is quite special compared with other countries. Yes,
they are. The Chinese people are very technology savvy because the equipment is made locally, and so they tend to adopt technology in droves. Asian consumers generally are. But the passengers are different. You're saying, do they consume more, for instance?
Yes, actually, Chinese customers, consumer, they want to get everything free. Yes, I believe that's.
They have this in common with the
yes,
consumers, like
but like Tencent company is quite interested in this business, and Tencent maybe also provide service and advisement. But who knows that many Chinese companies want to invest money for this business. Maybe next year we can. I expect maybe about maybe more than 20 narrow-body flight will be used that satellite service, and I believe more. We can go back to see the K-band tag for narrow-body. Yes, for one flight now they are about 10% customer will pay that service. That's good news because
the person who pays a lot.
Yes, and the percentage still increase because they are just charged customer from last month, just 1 month, and increase from the 5% to 10%, and maybe the 20% now, something like that. I believe that because they charge their not based on the megabyte, they based on time, maybe just 1 hour or 2 hour flight, they will charge customer like the 20 yuan. Something less than $3, something like that. But you have to see some video, like investment, something like that. So the good news that many, like Tencent, who have many customers for land, and then they want to their high value customer can get service in flight. So it's very easy to push the customer use the service in flight because they have about 1 billion customer for land. They have the game, also the many value added. So good news. We will work with this kind of company very close. Yes.
So the other regional joint ventures that APT is thinking of setting up in some of the countries maybe that you listed at the beginning, Mr. Wong, aero services are going to be a key focus of that. It's not very well developed. For instance, in a country like Indonesia, even though Indonesia has 24 airlines, some of them fly long distances. They compete tooth and nail. They're looking for any competitive differentiator they can, in addition to price, and they have no satellite services because they also don't have a lot of money. Are you looking into this as a market where you could make a difference, given your experience with Upstar 6D and what APSAT has done?
Yeah, certainly we will look at the all viable business, be it on the land, on the sea, and or in the air. The question is for the IFC business. I think for the future, if you want to make money, you have to meet several conditions. One is that we have to understand that in the future, in a fully competitive market, the airline cannot do business without access to internet in the current society. Okay, in modern society, you cannot do business without access. The passengers use it or not is a different story, but you have to have it. So this is the number one. Number two, in order to be commercially successful, you have to go free. You can use others, for example, advertising, or you put the charges into the air ticket. So the passengers' experience will be much better. And they do not to bother themselves to log in, to put a credit card, or to pay. Those kind of process will be blocked.
So does APT want to involve itself into those details? We were talking about vertical integration. What you're describing is a service provider, is an airline's problem.
Right.
We have seen one satellite operator wade into all this when Intelsat acquired GoGo. Is it a vertical integration question for you, or are you watching all this thinking?
What I want to say is we have already tapped the water together with Jason Lee, the APT Mobile Satcom, for the IFC, for the Maritimes. But in China, because we know China better than any other market. But for other countries, we need to consider some regulatory environment, some commercial concerns, and the 2 points I just mentioned is a precondition. If the market cannot work that way, I think temporarily we are really hesitant to penetrate that field.
What do you think of Intelsat buying GoGo? One of your customers, by the way. That's the thing about conflict and vertical integration.
Another initiative of Intelsat to go vertical. I have to say this is pretty good. This is a restructuring of the capacity and the service for their future business. I think the other satellite operators are also targeting that way. I don't know what is behind, but one thing is certain. Intelsat has very good and also plenty of EPIC capacity, which is targeted for the mobile services. So
they do. It's a competitor to Epstar 6D. Now, the deals that GoGo has with APSAT are the deals that they have, and the contract is a contract, of course.
I would say
but longer term.
Yeah. In Asia Pacific, I think APT Mobile Satcom and the Intelsat capacities can be kind of complementary. So may not have a direct competition.
And Intelsat doesn't have the Chinese passport that you have.
That's right.
Yes, actually, the interesting that for Apt Satcom, we are using the Intelsat service for the Maritime for global coverage. And for mainland China, and the Intelsat also want to use 6D for their global coverage, because Chinese regulation, they have to use the Chinese satellite. So we are also talking about the maybe the non-cooperation also for the aero business from last year. Yeah, but because of COVID-19 and this year, we maybe will begin to discuss next year. So I think they like the Baozhong mentioned, yes, it's very easy to work together in Asia Pacific area because most of Chinese customers want to use the Chinese solution, also by the services provider. Yes, and many international airline company want to fly into China. So it's easy to work together with Intelsat, I believe.
It's in fact not just a regulatory question, because this is something that we observe very much in the IoT market, for instance, where you want to provide retail solutions in the final markets. It's really best if you have a local address for all sorts of reasons. And so Australian IoT companies tend to sell mainly to Australia. European IoT companies tend to sell primarily in Europe, because you have to have the local support. The engineers who speak the language, be in the time zone, have warehouses of spare parts within 30 minutes to an hour of the customer, and so on and so forth. So the vertical integration does not necessarily mean that you go completely global. That's an even more difficult thing to do. Speaking of that, let's go back to conclude maybe into the shipping industry a little bit. Since you all have experience of that market, it's one of the most complicated industry under the sun, with all those different classes of ships, those hundreds and hundreds of ship owners and different tiers and so on. There's a lot of different cycles and wheels in that industry. Is it the same selling your satellite service to a chemical tanker as to a container vessel, or do you find that market is really requires more segmentation, and maybe you have to choose which types of customers you want to talk to, which types of ships you want to get familiar with? And the Asian market has long had the reputation of being a little bit behind Europe in terms of ship owners adopting IT and satellite communications and high technology that's not purely maritime in general. I'm wondering if they're catching up. The Asian ship owner has maybe unfairly been portrayed as small, very even tighter on money than in other regions, and not terribly interested. What's your experience in this? You can all take that question. I think you all have a wealth of experience on this. Mr. Nkengi, maybe, since Singtel is very active in that market.
I think that may be, in some ways, that generalization is a little bit of outdated itself, because actually the world has gotten very small nowadays. There are many regulation changes around the world on the maritime industry, where, regardless of whether you are an Asian flagship or maybe a European flagship, as long as you are within my territorial water, you have to adhere to these rules, like emission rules and stuff like that itself. So the adoption of technology by the ship owners itself, it comes along that it is no longer good to have. But in some ways, there are regulatory forces around the world, as we are more aware that we have to help to save Mother Earth, that these are things which are essential, critical, and must be done. So adoption of technology is here today. So if you do not have technology, if you do not have connectivity, for that matter, you also have a problem where you can't even find sailors to sail for you. Last time, I think not so long ago, once you go on the ship, as a sailor, you're out of sight, out of mind. You can never contact your loved one. But now all of us are so addicted to our phone. The moment you cut off anybody from the internet, there will be withdrawal syndromes. So there will be revolt. So there will be, the whole maritime industry is actually, in the past 3 years, evolving massively towards coming close to where, technology of adoption, connectivity as what it is. There are still many ships which are still, okay, look, Once upon a time, the ship owners will say, oh, my ship, I'm okay with 25 megabit of connectivity per month. But 25 per megabit, I mean, to any of us who are land-based on the mobile phone, it's gone within 1 second. So how can a ship just be connected on just, especially if you're not only just regional, but you're going for 2 weeks, 3 weeks between two countries, you definitely need more than 25 megabits connectivity.
Right. So it's a composite of many things. It's the labor market. If it's easy to get crew members, you don't have to necessarily indulge their need for connectivity. Maybe that's going to change now because being in the maritime profession has become a little bit scary. Maybe Asian shipping companies will find it they'll have to make more concessions to the workers. The other thing is the length of the voyage. If you spend 6 months at sea crossing the Panama Canal, you need this equipment. If you mainly do 2-day voyages from along the coast of Indonesia, maybe you don't. Now, and the way global trade is shifting, maybe Asian exporters will rely more on Asian shipping lines, which will make longer voyages, and that would be good for services. Mr. Lee, Mr. Wong, what are your views on those shifts in your Asian maritime market? Are you seeing the same good trends there?
Yeah, I fully agree with Pengji. In that, in the futures, the sailors shall be, well treated in order to find sufficient workers to work for you, and also. If you look at the current trend of the ships or other machines like cars or even mobile phones, so the equipment of the telecommunication means is a must. So whether you use it or not, before you buy the ships, you have to have all this. Like a mobile phone, I believe more than 80% of the functions I will never use, but you have to have it when you buy the mobile phone. The ship is the same. So every ship in the future will have to equip with a mobility capability.
Mr. Lee, let's finish with you. What are the Chinese shipping lines telling you? That they don't have a choice? They have to have the technology. They've waited for too long. They need it now because their own market is shifting.
I want to share the experience first because actually the fishing ship, now the Chinese market holds more than 10,000 fishing ships who are using the VSAT service, yes, or even the just traditional satellite, POV satellite. Why? What happened in the last 4 years? Because of 5 years. 5 years ago, when we began to the maritime for fishing ship, the number is 0, but now it's 10,000. That's amazing. What happened? Now, because we have, my country have about 4 major service providers. But interesting that these 4 major service providers are also the tender manufacturer. So this not driven by the technology, it's driven by the cost. Because they are the attendant manufacturer, so they will reduce the cost for the remote side to very low. So that means they can provide to the customer, end customer, based on very low cost attendant. So they integrate the attendant and modem. So all business is the B2B to C. Who is the B in middle? The service provider. We sell the bandwidth, also throughput to this service provider, and they in charge of the end customer directly. They will pay the cost for remote side. I help them to build more efficient satellite. Also, I buy the ideal hub. They need to pay this hub. We will stay in teleport. We also provide the data center, even software. So we work together very good. So but there's another trend that's about technology. It's about satellite. Why I talk about the small antenna and the uplink? Because in the last 2 years, the customer want to pay more about the good service. They want to get the short video, and they also want to share the short video. So they need more bandwidth for uplink instead of the traditional downlink. In some shapes, the bandwidth for downlink and uplink, even the 1-to-1, that's another trend. So that means they need LTS satellite for more stronger signal, not downlink but uplink. So they need a smaller antenna, and I believe maybe 3 years later, I will give a number. It's double. That means 20,000 fishing ships will use this satellite service. Yes, this is the Chinese fishing ship market. Yes.
Indeed. Thank you for that insight into this market. Yes, the fishing industry is one of the most difficult industries actually for communication providers to penetrate. Once it is penetrated, fisherman talks to fisherman, and the logic of competition hopefully helps everyone do his job better. Gentlemen, thanks very much for the insights that you gave us. We could, I think, have kept on talking for 2 hours because there are so many markets that we could touch upon, and they are all so interesting in themselves. I hope we were that interesting to the audience. Thank you very much again for joining us. Thank you very much again to audience for watching us, and please watch out for the APSCC webinars. They all illuminate one interesting aspect, one facet of this great satellite market. Thanks very much. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Be safe and see you soon.
Thank you very much, Stefan. And thank you, Bao Zhong. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Kengi. Really appreciate your insights and your time for today. And thank you very much for sponsoring the webinar today, APT. Please tune in for the next session in our webinar series. Join us next week for the Aon Risk Management panel. Is this a turning point for the space insurance industry? Please join us for that next week. We look forward to seeing you then. Thank you.